Let's go inside the House of Commons, where MPs now have the government's budget implementation bill, and where, for a fourth straight day, Conservatives are accusing Liberals of a failed drug policy, and Liberals are accusing Conservatives of ties to extremists.
Mr. Speaker, this government is supposed to be in the business of protecting children, not killing them with exposure and access to hard drugs. The RCMP has confirmed that legal hard drugs are being sold on the black market. In Abbotsford, the Soccer Association has to regularly sweep the needles for pitch. The Legion and many businesses in Mission have to deal with crack smoke every day. When will this government do the right thing and cancel their ideologically extreme experiment to legalize hard drugs and start protecting BC's children?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as a mother of three, including teenagers, I care so much about Canada and Canadians, and I agree, opioid addiction is a tragedy. It is a public health tragedy, and it is a public safety tragedy. But let me tell you what is putting the public safety of all Canadians at risk. Consorting with white supremacists and misogynists. That is a public safety risk. The Conservatives have an opportunity today to disavow that. They should do it.
All right, well, let's bring in our political observer panel to talk about what's happening in the House chamber. Susan Smith was a longtime Liberal communications staffer and now co-founder and principal with Blue Sky Strategy Group. Sean Murphy is a former chief of staff to the Conservative Whip, now principal with Earnscliffe Strategies. And Anne McGrath is principal secretary to NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. Welcome back to all three of you. Sean, I want to begin with you. We've had a couple days of at least more relatively serene question periods, I guess you could say, compared to what we saw on Tuesday. Still, we've had Conservatives calling for the Speaker to resign, Greg Fergus not giving any indication that's going to happen. So where do you see this story going now? Well,
I think the way it played out this week, the Speaker did the government no favors in terms of the attention that this issue has gotten. I think the amount of chaos that unfolded in the House on Tuesday in question period, with the leader of the opposition getting kicked out, it actually, I think it probably drove a lot more eyeballs to QP yesterday. So a lot more Canadians were tuning into this network to watch question period, expecting to see fireworks. And what they saw was the future Prime Minister asking the current Prime Minister about a policy that's been absolutely devastating for communities in this country.
Susan, how do you think the Liberal Party, the Liberal caucus, is handling this story over the past 48 hours?
I think they found something they can press the Conservatives on, and they found that it worked. They made Pierre Poilievre so mad this week that he lost his mind and went wacko in the House of Commons and was very un-prime ministerial in waiting, and got censured by the Speaker for it. So I think the Liberals are trying to present a reasonable tone. They've asked the Leader of the Opposition to disavow Diagolon, which is a far-right extremist group. They've asked him to explain why he's hanging out with people with, convoy-type signage at the Quebec-Ontario border, and he's allowing that to continue to go on. So the Liberals are pressing the button. They're trying to manage the tone and dial it down a bit, I think, too. I don't think the shenanigans that happened earlier in the week did anybody a service, but if anything, it showed that Pierre Poilievre kind of can't keep it together if you press the right button on him.
And your leader talked about Pierre Poilievre, saying that he acted like a bully, acted like a coward. Also, the NDP reinforcing support for the Speaker's decision. Where do you see this going now?
Well, the reporting on this has been quite interesting because people are really focusing on this idea that that it was about calling the Prime Minister wacko and calling the drug policies wacko. Really, what it was about was not respecting the role of the Speaker and the authority of the Speaker. And in both cases, it was about the authority of the Speaker. And the Speaker does have authority in that House, and has to be listened to. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is, I would be interested to know how many Canadians even noticed that this happened? I mean, we'll maybe find out in the next few days, I'm sure. But I'm pretty sure it's more inside baseball than we might think. It was, for those of us who watch it, it was quite remarkable. I mean, I was quite surprised to see what was going on. I was especially surprised to see the entire Conservative caucus walk out with their leader. And question period had been building up to a point. I think it's kind of stabilized a little bit in the last couple of days, maybe because of some of the pressure, some of the steam went out. But it was building up to a point where it was absolutely unbelievable. It was like the yelling and the screaming and the taunts, and it was so childish, so immature, and so unnecessarily angry.
Right, and at the heart of this, simmering underneath the language, is the issue of drug decriminalization and what the BC government is requesting, a very serious issue. Susan, I guess, what is the political fallout for the parties dealing with that issue now?
I think, to back it up a bit, the BC government wanted to try an experiment with decriminalization. So they worked with the federal government to make sure that there could be exceptions to the laws in order to be able to attempt to try this experiment. It didn't work. So now they've said to the government, the feds, it didn't work, you can reverse those things. So the feds, I think, are doing what they need to do, is not just have a knee-jerk reaction, but properly look at things. But there's no question this is an issue. It's a terrible issue in BC. It's a terrible scourge in BC. But I think the Conservatives need to tell the truth on it. There's a lot of, I think Pierre Poilievre, there's footage of him 2 days ago in the House of Commons saying that BC nurses aren't nursing their babies anymore because they're afraid there was poison in the air at the hospital. Like, there's that level of nonsense that's being spit out about it. It's a terrible issue. I think the federal government needs to act responsibly, do the right due diligence, and make a decision, and probably will reverse the policy. I would encourage them to do so. And that is the bottom line issue. It's a public health issue.
Okay, so Sean, I'll let you weigh in, and you can tell us kind of from the Conservative perspective how the party's been handling this here.
Well, I'd say you could see it in the tone that they took yesterday and the tone that they took today. We saw it in the clip at the top of the segment from Brad Biss. They're taking this extremely seriously. And it's not just the MPs in BC, but it's certainly them, but it's MPs across the country who are seeing this, who are hearing this from their constituents in their communities, that the choices that the government has made to date and the choices that they're refusing to make at the behest of the BC government are really having serious and devastating impacts on their communities. And what they want to see is the government take it seriously and not just focus on the choice of words of the Leader of the Opposition.
Okay, Anne, we now have a budget implementation bill. We've heard NDP leader Jagmeet Singh say the party will support it, but he does have issues that he wants dealt with on the Canada Disability Benefit, on Indigenous First Nations Child Services, I should say. What did the NDP get from the government over the last couple of weeks that wasn't already in place on April 16th when that budget came out?
I think what Jagmeet Singh was able to get was assurances that we would be looking at how to improve the disability benefit, and I think that there are serious issues. Number one, with the amount. I was frankly quite shocked at how low the amount was. I was not expecting it to be as paltry as it was. $200 a month is so little when you consider the need. So I think that there needs to be a real attempt at kind of ramping that up and finding a way to improve that. But also there's big issues around eligibility and tying it to the disability tax credit, and issues around what the provinces are going to do, stopping them from clawing that money back, but also encouraging the provinces to also increase the amount that they provide in that. With respect to Indigenous Child Services, Jordan's Principle, which is something that the NDP actually got moved and got through, basically says that when a child needs help, an Indigenous child needs help, that you don't squabble over jurisdiction. You just step in and do it, and then jurisdiction can be dealt with later. And it's not being the timelines for that are not being met, and that is a very, very serious problem. And I think that we got. I think they've acknowledged that we were right about that, and that they have to do something about it. So those are important things. The other thing I should say is yesterday, 1 million people that didn't qualify didn't have any dental insurance before, started to be able to get dental care. So there are a lot of things in that budget that we are very proud of. Dental care, pharmacare, certainly the school nutrition program, anti-scab legislation. There's a lot there that I think we can be proud of.
So I guess the question that flows from that, Susan, I'll come to you then, is Anne says there's a lot in the budget. The Liberal government has been out selling that budget, but the polls are not showing, at least yet, a real change in support. We have Abacus data saying the Conservative lead is now up to 21, which is the highest that firm has ever recorded. So what do you think it's going to take over the long term for the Liberals to start, I guess, closing that gap?
Well, I think the gap was a steady decline, and so I would argue that to go up in the polls, it's a steady incline. You're not going to see a precipitous fall off and a precipitous jump that's going to stay for any stage. So I think the Liberals have put together a budget that appeals to some of the things that were really on people's minds on affordability and housing. You need to see that set in, sink in, and traction, shovels in grounds for people to really feel that they're looking hard. Also, the election is far away, right? People don't have to make a ballot choice tomorrow. So they're going to take a look over the next year at the parties, at all the leaders, at who behaves himself in question period, who can't hold their temper, who can make measured and insightful and impactful policy announcements for people. So I would say they need to keep doing what they're doing, because in terms of telling the story of the budget, reaching out to Canadians, connecting to Canadians, and show them how the policies that they're putting forward, they're practical and have a practical implication. But there will be no quick jump. And I don't think it makes sense to think that there would be an immediate quick jump.
Okay, and Sean, I want to talk to you about the Conservative handling of the budget, because we do have this situation where the Liberals have left their changes to the capital gains tax outside the budget bill. So if it's going to be a standalone bill, perhaps that would make Conservatives have to vote specifically on that. Now, the finance minister has said no, that's not why we're doing this, but we do have sources telling reporters that it is a reason why. So how are the Conservatives going to be handling this issue of the capital gains tax, which is one of the parts of the budget really that has gotten the most attention from Canadians?
I'd say, first of all, they have been desperate. The Liberals have been desperate to have this fight for 2 weeks. And they tried when they tabled the budget, and the Conservatives didn't take the bait. And they're trying again now by separating it out and having a standalone piece of legislation to hope to have a debate and vote on that. But I think, their claims that this measure is going to impact a very small number of Canadians. Conservatives are going to continue to be focusing on the tax measure that is impacting 100% of Canadians, and that's the carbon tax. So the affordability issues are still top of mind. The fact that the carbon tax is driving up the costs on gas, groceries, and home heating, they're going to keep talking about that. So the government is going to keep trying to find different distractions, capital gains being one, the things that Susan mentioned earlier as well. I think Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre are going to continue to drive the narrative in the country, and that's why you're seeing the polls the way they are.
Okay, Anne, I'll give you the last word.
I will say that I've seen a lot of polls in my lifetime, and they're almost never a predictor of something that's going to happen, months, maybe a year away. They're not a predictor. I worked with Jack Layton as his chief of staff. He was the leader for 8 years. The entire time he was leader, the NDP was between 16 and 18% in the polls. And we went into the 2011 election hitting 20% for the first time during his leadership and won 103 seats.
We'll leave it there. And Susan, Sean, thank you so much.
Thanks, Andrew.